See the line where the sky meets the sea. It calls me, and no one knows how far it goes. And it seems like it's calling out to me, so come find me and let me know how far I'll go. Welcome back to StillerBros at the Movies, where we're a little late on this one, but still, Moana 2.
So, about 8 years ago, Moana came out, and it was a pretty good-sized hit for Disney.
So, the thing about Moana is, after rewatching it last night to prep for this, it's amazing. It's way more amazing than you probably remember it being. It's just kind of wonderful how much of it skates by on just the charm of, oh, this is a Disney animation movie from the guys who basically made the Disney Renaissance, and also two incredibly charming lead actors hold this whole affair down.
Yes. So the idea of making a continuation of the story was almost inevitable.
It's something that I definitely thought of as we were walking out of the theater. And when it came down to what form I thought it should take, my first thought went to TV show.
And apparently, we weren't the only ones who thought that, because in 2020, at the investor call, it was announced that of the projects that Disney Animation was working on, one of those projects was a Moana television show.
The place where the first Moana movie left off really gave us the idea that, look, a continuation could happen if we wanted it to, but also it would be a lot more fun to have a series, because essentially a series would allow it to have way more open doors, a lot more stories to play with, and most importantly, you wouldn't have to have Dwayne Johnson in every single episode. You could just play around with it. Of course, that's probably what they were thinking when they were like, we're going to make a 8-episode series for Disney Plus. And so work got into it, and then we didn't hear anything about it for a while.
And for a while we thought we weren't sure what was happening until about a year ago, when Moana gained a huge spike on Disney Plus streams, becoming one of the most popular movies on the service.
And it became a thing where a lot of people just kind of assumed that the Disney executives were looking at these numbers and looking at the idea of, well, how can we follow up Moana? Wait, didn't we commission a TV show a while back?
So a couple months after that, and that news we got a teaser trailer announcing that Moana 2 was going to be coming out the following Thanksgiving.
Which, if you know anything about how Disney usually makes their big animated features, you know that's a really tight timetable to be announcing this and then releasing it. So a lot of people jumped to the conclusion that this was Disney essentially recutting and reformatting the TV series to be a movie. Of course, that was confirmed.
Yes, that was later confirmed almost immediately. So that is a thing that's happening, and it has been a controversial decision because a lot of the people who worked on the show were signed on to be working on a show and not a movie. So a lot of their work so they got paid show rates and everything. By the way, congrats on TAG for potentially circumventing a strike. Let's see how that goes at this point in time.
But I think the thing that most people were finding more controversial was the fact that Disney's history with cutting together episodes of a show instead of making the show, because they just realized, we don't want to make a show, but we also don't want to throw away all the work we did. Hey, let's put it together into a movie, was basically how the direct DVD stories came about for most of them. It's how Aladdin, The Return of Jafar, or Buzz Lightyear's Star Command, Belle's Magical Journey, Atlantis, The Lost Empire 2, all of those kind of came about. Not because they had a story to tell, but because, hey, this looks kind of cinematic. Have it ready by November.
Yeah, but at the same time, they made this decision on an early enough timetable that they could probably go back and make it a little more for a movie and everything. But
supposedly they went back and they cleaned up a lot of animation, because this was not made by the main Walt Disney Animation Studio. This was made by an offshoot studio up in Canada.
Yeah. But this time, obviously, with the fact that this is a TV show, chopped down with a lot of stuff, there is a lot missing. There will be. We're interested to see what it looks like ultimately, because we were excited for the show, and we're not less excited for the movie, because it's Moana. We love Moana. We wanted to see more of it anyway.
And it just kind of felt like one of those things where it's like, okay, we'll watch it, and hopefully we'll like it. Though the reviews of everyone on YouTube just kind of acting as though this is somehow the biggest, worst thing that Disney's done recently is just kind of overwhelming, where it's like, guys, it's a less than stellar sequel to a movie. You've seen these before. Stop acting like Disney just kind of killed your dog in front of you.
Yeah, we're not watching Meet the Deedles 2, Deedlier than ever or something.
We're watching a sequel to one of the most successful movies Disney's put out in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But speaking of the movie that they're sequelizing, Moana, of course, has people like The Rock and Auli'i Cravalho in it, and of course Alan Tudyk. They're all back for the sequel.
This time around, obviously, since Clements and Musker have retired and are now and weren't going to be coming back for the show anyway, we have new directors in David Derrick Jr., Jason Hand, and Dana Ledoux Miller.
All three people who were definitely probably just going to be directing on the series, and then they were like, okay, your episodes, and your episodes are all going to be made into the movie, so come on.
Let's just smash it all together, see how it goes.
But yeah, a bunch of first-time feature directors making this movie out of a bunch of their episodes, and for a while, a lot of people were questioning whether or not Dwayne Johnson and Auli'i Cravalho would even come back for this. And to that I say, guys, Auli'i Cravalho was probably always going to come back for this. In fact, she's actually said that she was working on this, doing voiceover for this, back when it was going to be a series. Auli'i Cravalho actually has a really good relationship with the Disney company. Like, she's returned to play Moana for even the smallest of parts, like Wreck-It Ralph 2 and Once Upon a Studio. And even outside of that, she played Ariel in The Little Mermaid Live. She did a song for a Disney Princess promotion, and she was the title character of a Disney Channel original series that aired the last 2 years. It's
not on Disney Plus anymore, but she was but it was a good show, and we were a little pissed that they took it off.
But it's still a thing of Auli'i Cravalho was not going to not do this. The reason that she's not going to be in the live action remake is specifically because she doesn't want to play 16-year-olds for the rest of her career.
Yeah.
She said as much in interviews.
Yeah.
But Dwayne Johnson seemed like the hard one to sell to get back. Like, when the series was announced, we didn't even know if Maui was going to be in it, because it seemed like Dwayne Johnson was too big of a get for the series. Then it got turned into a movie, and hey, look, he's back. And speaking of being back, the songwriters this time around, Lin-Manuel Miranda is not back as a songwriter.
No, he's busy dipping his toe into the Pride Lands for the next Lion King movie.
But for right now, we do not have Lin-Manuel Miranda, one of the pieces of the secret sauce that made the movie. Foa'i and Mark Mancina are back, but to take over for Lin-Manuel Miranda when it comes to writing the English language songs for the movie, we've got Barlow and Bear, the songwriting duo behind the unofficial Bridgerton musical, which I guess means that if Moana gets a love interest in this, it's going to be some nobleman who she's going to act out a bunch of romantic comedy tropes with. I don't know. But Barlow and Bear are doing the songs, and so far I've heard 2 of the songs, the end credits version of Beyond, the I Want song, and Can I Get a Chi Who, the Rock song from this movie, and both of them are fine, but they're not nearly as instantly memorable and iconic as their equivalents from the first movie.
But we're excited to see this just because, again, we love Moana. We watched it again last night, and we loved it just as much, maybe even more than we did the first time we saw it.
And it's just a thing of, like, look, everyone seems to be against this movie just purely on principle, but it's also a case of we're the positive guys. We're the guys who said that we mostly liked a lot of the stuff in Wish, or that Frozen 2 was actually really, really good and people should get a stick out of their ass.
We're the guys who, when we say negative things, probably surprise a lot of people.
It means more when we say negative stuff because we're so overwhelmingly positive. So let's see how many positive things we can get out of this movie that the internet seems to be so intent on hating just because of the facts of why it exists. So on that note, we'll see you out to the jump. So it was fun.
It was pretty good. Not groundbreaking. Nowhere near masterpiece that the first one was.
And also nowhere near the catastrophe that everybody seems to be acting like it is. It's fine. It's a good enough sequel to Moana. At times you can definitely tell where the breaks in episodes would be from when it was a TV show, but otherwise it's fine. The animation is good, the songs are serviceable, and the cast is still as game as they've ever been.
I feel like it lost a lot of stakes though by not being a series, because at the beginning it feels like they're saying that it's going to take a lot of time, and then we know it's going to be it's an under 2 hour movie, so it doesn't feel like to us like they're away for a very long time.
The thing about this movie is that it's upping the stakes by adding more characters, a bigger world, a lot more things to play with, but it also ultimately just kind of is like, okay, there are other characters here, but do these characters actually have anything to do? Are they going to be actually going through character growth? But most of that is handled off screen, and once again, it's fine, but it's not the very simple but grandiose thing that the first movie was.
Yeah. So let's get into it a little more.
So, obviously, Auli'i Cravalho and Dwayne Johnson are still perfectly fitting into their roles. They're charming as ever as Moana and Maui, and obviously they've got the chops to perform the songs that they have to perform as well as they do. Though I'd point out that at a couple points in Can I Get a Chi-Hu, the Dwayne Johnson's lack of professional singing experience does start to kind of come out a little bit. It's not terrible, but it's just like there's a couple of points where it's like, oh right, he's not a singer, so his voice is actually a little weak in places.
It's also the fact that Maui is sidelined for most of the movie, so we don't get much of Dwayne Johnson in there.
Yeah, you almost get the feeling that they almost didn't have Maui until they decided this was going to be a movie instead of a series. I'm not saying that Maui is relegated to basically an extended cameo, but but it feels like he doesn't show up and do nearly as much as he did in the first movie.
Yeah.
Which, not really a criticism, because the one thing you don't want to do with a sequel is try to rest on your laurels and act like, well, if we just do the same tricks from the first movie, we can make it through here.
And that's one thing to say about this, is that it doesn't do exactly what they did in the first movie.
Granted, the plot is very similar.
The plot is similar, but it's different.
There's a few small differences here and there.
But it's not like structurally the exact same movie, like something like Mary Poppins Returns was.
But it's basically the same kind of story in the sense of something horrible is happening, Moana needs to go to this place and break this curse so that everything can be opened up and the world can be free to roam the oceans again. It's not really a complicated plot, and it's similar to what they did in the first movie, but also they kind of are like, well, structurally we can move a few things around to make it kind of different.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff back from the first movie, like we get the Kakamora, or like a similar moment to Shining.
Or of course we've got basically Alan Tudyk as Hey Hey doing the greatest hits beats, but I think the things that really shine through in this are, once again, and Auli'i Cravalho is still fantastic as Moana, and Hill has the perfect energy for the character to be awkward when necessary, serious when necessary, and still be able to sing the songs. And also the animation is fantastic. Not nearly as amazing, over the top, wow, how did you pull this off in the time you had kind of animation like the first movie had, with these amazing designs and everything like that, but still pretty decent animation, especially considering the fact that this was supposed to just be a Disney Plus show and now it's on the big screen.
Yeah.
And speaking of animation, Disney living legend Eric Goldberg's work on Maui's tattoos is probably one thing that has been significantly upgraded from the first movie. Mostly because when Maui's tattoos are on screen, it definitely needs to show a lot more emotion than just, well, I'm here for the comic relief.
But this is a very fun movie. There's a lot of stuff with the way that the story goes, and ultimately is teasing a sequel. So
yeah, they very much are clearly wanting to do either Moana 3 or actually let's make Moana the series this time around, because there's a mid-credit scene that's very clearly setting up what could have been season 2, could very well be Moana 3.
I mean, the way that this movie is doing at the box office, it's probably going to be Moana 3.
Yeah. Whether or not we're going to need to wait a few more years before they actually get stuff together for Moana 3 is anyone's guess.
I mean, the release date might be delayed because the way that this movie's released delayed the live-action movie so that it's coming out in 2026.
But then there's just kind of stuff that's a little bit weaker than the first movie. Like, Moana has crewmates now instead of just her and Hey with Maui filling in the gaps. And her crewmates are interesting and fun characters. It's just that it feels like they don't nearly have enough to do in the movie besides just kind of be there and do their one thing.
And this was something that was obviously probably expanded more upon in the show, where they would have told the story in like 4 to 5 hours instead of now just an hour and 40 minutes.
And once again, the songs are fine.
They're not nearly on the level of Lin-Manuel Miranda, but who is?
It's just, once again, the thing is that they're okay songs. They're good, but they're not nearly as instantly memorable and iconic as the first movie's songs. It's hard not to, I don't want to act like I'm comparing them, especially since I think this might be the first time that Disney's had an all-female songwriter team.
Yeah.
But it's also just kind of like, I don't know how to...
It feels unfair to compare the two, really, because one was a movie made by these Disney legends at the top of their game,
and this one is
a bunch of people who are doing this for the very first time.
This is a bunch of people who thought they were making a TV show and then suddenly had to make it into a movie instead, and so elements got moved around. Some probably even full-on chopped out. Supposedly Bob Iger looked at what the creators had for this, saw a bunch of big cinematic-looking shots, and was like, that's great, let's make it a movie instead. But I think we all can tell that, from the ideas that have been put forth, that this was probably just them being like, live-action Moana's not coming up for like another 3 years. Moana is popular now. It's like the top thing on our streaming service. We need to strike now while the iron is hot. Yeah. And so the idea of making this into a movie, and also, hey, we didn't have anything to fit the November release schedule, so 2 birds.
But ultimately, this is just a sequel. It's nothing to shake a stick at, but it's still pretty good and pretty worth seeing in the theater, if only because we're still very open about the idea that you need to go to theaters and keep supporting that as much as possible.
And also, it's just the fact that this isn't as bad as everyone seems to act like it is. Yes, I understand that this movie did incredibly well at the box office, and everybody's like, and we let Furiosa bomb. I'm mad about that too. We can't act like the PG family movie that's a sequel to one of Disney's biggest movies of the last 10 years is somehow going to be equivalent to an R-rated action movie with so little dialogue that you have to rely on actually paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, it turns out that Furiosa and Moana 2 don't have a lot of the same target audience. Who knew?
Yeah.
But all in all, Moana 2 is fine. It's not nearly as bad as the internet critics who want to be like, well, let's clickbait this to make it look like Moana 2 is the worst thing that's Disney's put out. But it's also not nearly as high the heights of the first movie. But, good effort, people. Let's just keep going at this point, and maybe we can make a fantastic movie to the level of Moana again.
Yeah.
So, I think that's it for right now. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to tune in next time when the King has returned. Bye.